And applause, and quite rightly, for Carl Perkins' Rock and Roll Around the World. And that's from the new album on Jet Records, which is called Old Blue Suede is Back. And Old Blue Suede, believe it or not, is here today. Carl Perkins, welcome to Honky Tonk.
Thank you, Charlie. It's a pleasure being here, man. It really is.
Well, it's nice of you to say it's a pleasure, because you just flown in from where today?
I left Jackson, Tennessee about 17 and a half hours ago. I flew to Nashville, from Nashville to New York, and I got over here about 3 hours ago.
And then what you going to do next? You're working now in England, or what?
Well, we're still doing about a couple of weeks promotion on the album. And then I do the Wembley Country Music Festival on Sunday the 26th. Then I go to Sweden, Finland, Germany, France. We've got quite a tour lined up. Then I come back to England and start a tour with Bo Diddley and Johnny and the Hurricanes on April the 12th.
Johnny and the Hurricanes, aren't
you? Yeah, they're still living. I didn't know that. Yeah.
I didn't know there was... You don't know if it's the same guys who were on in the first place, you know?
Well, I kind of doubt, Charlie, that it would be all of the same group. In America, there's a lot of the names of the old groups with maybe one or two of the fellows, you know,
right,
still around. But I doubt seriously that it'd be the old original, or all of them at least, you know.
Right, but we got the real Carl Perkins here, hands and all. And
yeah, the old man's still rocking.
I think people are going to be surprised and delighted with this record, because it seems very... I should just say what Carl's done, which is to go back to... well, you should say what you've done. You're going back to the old hits of the 50s, mainly.
Yeah, it was really hard to do, Charlie. When you start thinking of people like Chuck Berry, well, my goodness, Fats Domino, Little Richard, all these people, and you start trying to pick out a song by these cats. Man, it's hard to do. And I just started running into all kind of problems. People say, no, well, like the Fats Domino selection I chose there, they'd say Blueberry Hill. You know, I'd say, well, man, everybody does Blueberry Hill. So I decided that I'd just do my favorites by these great artists, and that's, well, like the Fats Domino song I've always admired the most was, Yeah, This Is Me and I'm in Love Again.
Yeah, and, that's my favorite too, funny.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, great.
Yeah. Well, it's not just getting the songs. The songs are one problem, which you seem to have coped with pretty well. To me, working now and trying to go back to the 50s without just sounding like an old-fashioned record, that seems to be the hard thing. And you've done it with these guys. The drummer, who's this guy, Haywood Bishop? He sounds really good.
Well, he, Charlie, was a stand-in for a boy by the name of Ronnie Tutt,
who we know about,
who played with Elvis for many years. And when Ronnie couldn't be there, this boy played with Elvis quite a lot. In fact, the last several tours Hayward was on, he went along and played most all the time. Ronnie was sick one tour, and Elvis used him and liked him very much. And I think he is really a great drummer. He's where it's at. He's hitting, man. He's going.
He's got a real terrific shuffle. Well, we'll come back to this record in a little while. What I'd like to start off doing, because I've heard you do several interviews myself, and they're always fascinating, and I feel the story's been pretty well established about what happened from Carl Perkins from the minute he made his record up until now.
Mm-hmm. And
I wanted to go back just before that and talk to you about some of the things that inspired you to become a musician in the first place. And
well, Charlie, Pal will have to go back as far as I can remember. I really can't remember a part of my life when I wasn't involved with a guitar some way or another. I've loved guitars when I was a little boy. I started beating around on a broom handle, and one day my dad came home from town with a cigar box, and he made me a little guitar. And I must not have been at that time over 3-4 years old. But I remember that little guitar. It had 2 strings on it, 2 pieces of baling wire, and I had a nail but I could tighten down a little with my little hand and get the string a little tighter. And actually, I could come up with a little tune, not very much, but I'd go around all over the house and all over the barnyard with that little thing. And I have always loved music. It's been a part of my life. I remember I lived out in the country and I had to ride a school bus. And we lived in a little 3-room house, and I was in one room. It was the morning I started to school. My older brother Jay had started 2 years prior to me. But I was crying because really I didn't want to start school. My dad thought that I was crying because I couldn't take my guitar, and he told my mama, said, well, Louise, just let him get on the bus with it, and maybe he'll shut his mouth. And I started school with my guitar. I really did. The first day I took it right on that bus, and all the kids, pardon me, they said, well, you brought it, Perkins, pick it. So I've loved it all my life, you know. And there was an old black man that lived across the field from us. He taught me many things. He taught me how to pick cotton. When I was 8 and 10 years old, I was above average cotton picker because the old black man John Westbrooks, he'd tell me, he said, now little Carly, you eventually, son, are going to have to go to the bottom of the stalk. So start down at the bottom, bend all the way down to that ground, and come up, and that way your little arms and hands won't knock out the side of none of them cotton bolls that you see. You can see them all if you'll just go to the bottom and work up. And he had a magic about him, and he really had a lot of magic after we got in from the cotton fields. He had an old guitar, and I thought he was the greatest guitar player in the world. As I grew older, I know now, and I've known for a long time, he really wasn't that great a guitar player, but he played some blues, and I used to go over and sit on his porch many hours at night and listen to him, and he influenced me a lot. I was listening to country music on the radio because we didn't have electricity back then, and we just had a battery-operated radio, and my dad was a type of, he was the hoss at our house, and when he turned the radio on, you didn't turn it up or down, and you didn't turn that dial sideways. You let it sit where the old man had it. And he liked country music, and I would listen to country music on the radio, but I would try to push some of them little licks that Uncle John Westbrooks was playing too. He'd sit around and just play the old blues, and that's really where my style actually came from. I'd sit and play with people like Bill Monroe. I'd hear him on the Grand Ole Opry, or Ernest Tubb, Roy Cuff. But when people like Roy Cuff would say, "What a beautiful thought I am thinking," our little guitar would be going, you know, I was string pushing and mixing the blues with what I was doing.
And would anybody have made a record that would have been something like the way that John would have played?
Pardon me now?
Would there be anybody who did make records in the sort of style that John was playing for you?
Yeah. They were guys who had that style perfected, that he was copying people like John Lee Hooker, people like that, B.B. King, the really blues players. That's what he was doing. But I didn't really get to listen to them a lot because, like I say, I didn't have a phonograph player, and my dad was strictly a country music lover. And
so you heard some of these records by, say, Johnny Hooker afterwards?
Oh, yeah. As I got a little older and got me an old car with a radio on it after my brother got 16, he came up with an old trap of a car. Wasn't any good, had a good radio on it, and we could listen to whatever we wanted to.
And that's another track from Carl's new LP called Old Blue Suede Is Back, and that's called Elijah. And I just can't say enough about these guys you got playing with you. It was produced at Chip Young's studio. Maybe?
Yeah, out in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. It's 12, 14 miles south, east of Nashville, yeah. Great little place, Charlie. He's got a big southern mansion out there, and out behind he's got a little log house with a big fireplace and a swimming pool. You can make a cut on a record and go jump in the water after if you want to. It's really a great place. And Chip is he's a great musician himself. You know, he's played guitar for many years on a lot of records, and he really knows. And the musicians really, they, as we say in the business, they really put out for Chip. I mean, they respect his ability, and he's got it together. These boys, it was really a great thrill to record this album. And last night I was talking with, well, let me get the time straightened out now. Last night I was on a jet. Night before last, I was talking with Felton Jarvis, the great man who produced this album for me. And he was telling me that he'd been talking to the boys in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and they were ready to get back in the studio and do some more, and I am as well. So in early May, I'll be going back out there, and I've written quite a few new things. I've gotten excited about this new record deal with Jet and United Artists, and being over here and being received so wonderful. It's got the old man in a different gear now. I'm anxious to get back and start recording some of the new songs that I've written.
Well, I have to confess that when I heard the guitar playing on there, I looked to see who the guitar player was for a minute. And of course, it's Carl Perkins himself. But, you sound just really at home with those people.
Oh, they're the type of, the caliber of musician that you just, they make you put everything you got. If you know anything, you have to, an old fellow like me, I got to use it all, man. I can't hold back, because they're just fantastic guys. And as I said a while ago, the bass player as well as David Briggs, the piano player, these boys worked a lot with Elvis, and of course they were just shattered when Elvis passed away, and this was the first time that they had gotten together as a group, and they were playing the type of thing, as you can tell there, that they love to do that. In fact, I would have this band with me if I didn't have a couple of my own sons playing with me. They offered to go to work for me, and it was a great compliment paid to me. It really was, yeah.
Okay, well, anybody who's woken up late and just realized the clocks have been put on or whatever, and you wonder what's going on, we're talking with Carl Perkins on Honky Tonk on Radio London, and we're going to go back to where we were. We played John Lee Hooker's Hobo Blues, which is from his days on Modern Records. I guess of the people you did hear on the radio that your dad had you tuned into.
Yeah.
Bill Monroe would have been somebody that heard a lot.
Bill Monroe, really, Charlie, was one of my favorites. He was my favorite country singer. I recognized a different style in Monroe. Most of his things were up-tempoed. Of course, it was that bluegrass. But there's a close connection with what we did in the early 50s and what Monroe does with bluegrass. It's bluegrass don't have the drums, but on a lot of bluegrass songs, there's a place for one, and you'd have rock and roll. I've always felt that way. But Bill Monroe, I like the way he, as we called it back in the country, he got on with the hauling. He played some foot stomping music.
And we were just hearing where you could put some sort of backbeat in on that.
Oh, yeah. Yes, sir. You could lace some of the old, just really rock and roll. It worked right behind it. I used to sit and do that with that song back when it was popular, back in the 40s.
Okay, well, chronologically, we got to where your brother Jay had bought a car, and you could listen to the car radio. At what point did you actually get together and start playing music yourself?
Well, of course, as I said earlier, Charlie, I'd played up until, I must have been around 12, 13 years old, and Jay being 2 years older than I, he was around 15, and I wanted to pick the guitar, and I needed somebody to second me, because it's just kind of holler just sitting there pushing on the string, and I talked Jay into, I said, let me show you some chords and you second me and we can play together. He wasn't really too knocked out about it at first, because he liked baseball and hunting and so forth, but I was just really, music was it for me, and but Jay, being the good old boy he was, he learned pretty quick. He learned enough to second me, and then he really got to liking music, and so he and I played, just the two of us, for 2 or 3 years, and then I must have been then around 16, and my younger brother Clayton was about 13 or 14 years old, and an old boy that lived across the field from us had a homemade bass fiddle, and he didn't have 2 strings on it, and that was one more than Clayton needed, because all he did was just slap that string, and it sounded really like a drum. That's the sound he got out of it. That's the sound he got out of it on our early records. It really made not a lot of difference to Clayton whether the bass was in tune or not, because he just went after that clicking sound, and he started playing with us, and we started. Back in those days, I didn't realize it then, Charlie, but they had a lot of amateur contests around that part of the country. They were some smart promoters. What they would do, they'd have them in the schoolhouses and in the gymnasiums there, and they knew that all of us fellows like little Carl Perkins and his brothers and all the guys that played around in the territory would show up, and they'd bring all of their folks, their kin folks would come to root for him, So these people were making a lot of money, and we wasn't getting anything, because they was charging all of our kin people to get in there to applaud for us, But we were lucky and pitiful looking, I guess. We just about would win somewhere. Just about every time. I think, looking back at it, I guess we were poor boys, and our old instruments wasn't, a lot of the boys had new guitars and things, and we was having to make do with what we had, and I guess really we got a lot of sentiment from the audience.
This was acoustic instruments you were playing, no?
Yeah, I didn't have a lead guitar at that time, no.
So how did anybody hear you at the back of the stage?
Well, everybody shut up and listened. They really were attentive. People would just really listen.
And you were doing what sort of songs then this time?
Well, by that time I'd started writing a few songs. I wrote the first side of my, the B-side it turned out to be, of my first record when I was 12 years old, a thing called Movie Mag. I wrote that song when I was 12 years old, and I'd started writing other songs, and we was doing Bill Monroe things, and my brother Jay, he was singing Ernest Tubbs songs, and of course, but we was putting that beat into everything we did, and we really sounded different to the other bands, and maybe that was the reason that we'd enter. I remember one time. We had to travel about 25 miles to a place called Dyersburg, Tennessee, and my dad and mom took us in the old car, and he said, "Now, boys, as far as I've took you fellas tonight, I want you to win everything there is." And it must have took, because we won the best band. I think Jay won the best singer. And they had a guitar contest, and some way or another I pulled that one out. we walked away with everything we entered that night, and I remember what a big lift coming back. We looked at the back of Dad's head as he wrestled with that old wore-out Ford coming down that gravel road, and I really felt good about it. I knew that I hadn't let him down, and
But there wasn't any money in winning. It was just...
No, nobody got paid. Nobody got anything but the guy who would put them on. He was making grocer money. That's the way they made their... A lot of these guys made good money doing that. But no, we never did. Then finally, they got to giving $5 or $10 first place prize, and when they started that, well, they wasn't. I mean, the picking took place then. We had to have that $10, you know, that first place money. And we were lucky, but we were devoted to it. We worked hard at it. We even back in those days. I was about 16 when I got my first electric guitar, and it was just a cheap one. It was a little Harmony, I think, was the name of it, and a little solid body and a real small amp. But it really did the trick for me. I could really hear myself. The people could hear me out there then, and that little guitar meant a lot to me. It caused me to really... I knew then if I made a mistake, they could hear me, so I had to sit up late at night and work kinks out, as we call it.
But you were working still in the cotton fields during the day? Or no?
Well, by this time, we'd moved from Lake County in the cotton fields where I was born, and we were doing what we call public work then. My older brother Jay and I was working at a mattress factory, upholstery shop. And then I went from that to Colonial Bakery. But then one night we played one of these contest type things, and a man came up to me after we'd won, and he said, "I'd like for you boys to play for me." I said, "Well, we sure will. What do you want us to play at? What do you got?" And he told me the name, and it turned out to be a honky-tonk that was very well known around that area. And of course my old mom, she frowned on it. She said, "I'll not have you boys picking in there where they dance and carry on like that and drink and so forth." I said, "But Mama, we don't have to." And Daddy said, "I'll go with them." But as it turned out, the old man wanted to go to nip a little too, see. But we talked her into it. I told her, I said, we're never going to get anywhere, Mama, playing just around the schoolhouses. As far as we're going to go, we're not going to make anything out of it. And this man's going to pay us $5 a piece a night. And he's talking about using us maybe 2 or 3 nights a week on the weekend. And we started playing a place called the El Rancho, but it was a tough place. It was patronized by rednecks who went there with that white shirt sleeve rolled up to sling knuckles, and a lot of people back when I first started said, "Boy, why don't you be still when you stand and sing and play that guitar?" I said, "I didn't start out that way, man. I had to be on my toes to dodging beer bottles, and it was part of it. Really, it was. I mean, I was fortunate that I could move around a little bit back in those places because I've dodged a few. I really have."
Okay. Well, I'm going to jump because I think another guy coming from you were north of Memphis, weren't you? North of Memphis.
Yeah, between Memphis and Nashville, a place called Jackson.
So in a minute we're going to get the story how you actually got to Memphis. But meanwhile, around the same time as you're playing down there, there's a guy called Junior Parker playing, I think, in the Mississippi. Honky-tonks, the same sort of places.
Yeah.
Junior Parker did that Love My Baby in 1953, and Carl sitting here says, I swear to God, never heard it before.
No, I never have heard it. That's the first time I've ever heard that. But I can hear exactly what you're talking about. That's the early rock and roll right there. In fact, I heard Mr. Train. I heard 2 or 3 of the early rock songs in that one song right there, and a lot of the guitar playing.
He's a guy called Pat Hare, And he'd been working like as almost like a session guy, as far as I could see at Sun, before Elvis even got there. So okay, well, that's interesting.
I was never, I didn't even know that Sun Records existed until I heard Elvis Presley. I heard Elvis one day. I was living at that time in a government project house, and I had 2 small children, and I was making my living then playing at this. Well, I was still playing at this El Rancho, this bad place I was telling you about. And I heard a disc jockey from Memphis. It came on at 12 o'clock noon, a fellow by the name of Bob Neal, who later started managing Elvis and myself, Johnny Cash, Jerry Lee Lewis. But I heard Bob say, here's a brand new record by a brand new artist, Elvis Presley, on Sun Records. And he played Blue Moon of Kentucky. And I did a backflip because I told my wife, I said, look at here. Somebody's recording what I've been playing all my life. I remember it really gave me an uplift because I'd been sending tapes all to record companies, and I'd get them back most of the time. I could tell they hadn't even been opened, and when they had been, well, they'd be a little letter saying, it's all right, but that's not what we're looking for. But when I heard Presley, it was this type of thing that I had been doing all my life, and I knew there was a ray of hope, so I started trying to find out where Sun Records was. Yeah. And we went down and started asking guys at service stations where 706 Union Avenue was. I hadn't been to Memphis, but maybe twice in my life. I was still very much a plain country small town boy when I first went down there. I couldn't hardly get used to cars passing you on both sides, the street that wide. It was, but we found it and was turned away when I walked in. The secretary, a lady by the name of Marion Keisler, she said, well, you look like you come down here to pick and sing. I said, yes, I did. She said, well, we got this new boy, Elvis Presley, and he's just more than we can handle. Said he's really getting hot. I said, yes, I know that. But I sing things about like he does. I said, me and my brothers, I said, they're sitting out there in the car. And she said, well, he's not here, but he won't listen to you, I know, because he's really busy. So I walked back out to the old car, and I sat down, and we was fixing to pull away. And up popped a 54 light blue bottom with a dark blue top, a Cadillac Coupe de Ville. And I had his parking place in front of that little 706 Union studio, and he didn't much like that. He liked to clip the front bumper off my old Plymouth when he whooped in there. And this sharp little cat got out from under that steering wheel, and he was dressed just like his car. I'll never forget. He had on light blue breeches with a dark sport coat, and I told my brothers, I said, that's got to be him. That's got to be him or Elvis Presley won. I'd never seen either one of them. And I cut out, and before he could get his hand on the door, I had mine back on his front door, and I said, are you Mr. Sam Phillips, the fellow that owns this? He said, yes, I am. I said, well, Mr. Phillips, my name's Carl Perkins, and my brothers are sitting there in the car, and I know now, I done been told that you're busy, and I know that, but nobody's too busy with what they can't spare just 2 or 3 minutes. And I said, this is the last straw for me. I've tried everywhere. He told me after then, he said, I met a guy I couldn't say no to. He said, you look like you look like your world have ended. I said, well, I'm glad you didn't turn me down, because I don't know but what it wouldn't have. And he told us to come on in, and I listened to 1 or 2 things. The first thing I did was this thing I wrote when I was 12 years old called Movie Mag. And he liked it. He said, write you another one and come back and I'll we'll put out a record one of these days. So, man, before we got back to Jackson, I had 2 or 3 written on the seat covers of the old car. But it was about a month after that before we got back. I called him every day, and he'd say, "Well, I'm still awful busy." But he decided that he would have me do country things because his label he felt was too small, for 2 guys doing the same type of music. So when he kind of let me venture in there a little bit with the second record, or a thing called Gone, Gone, Gone. And then he sold Elvis to Victor, and he said, get your songs together, because we're ready. And Blue Suede Shoes and Honey Don't came out January the 1st in 1956.
Sometimes it sounds, although we know there wasn't a drum there, something happens on the double bass the way Bill Black plays. It sounds like there is a drum.
Yeah, I'll tell you the secret there, Charlie. For my younger brother Clayton, as I said a while ago, he did that. And it was just kind of coincident. Bill Black and Clayton used to laugh about it back in the real early days. They said, "Man, we've been thinking alike with these fiddles." They would say they knew they didn't know how to play them, so they had to make some racket with it. And really what they did was they would just run the big bass string completely down where it didn't have a sound. And when they played with their thumb would grab this loose string and it would just pop back off of the neck of that fiddle is what they were doing. And that way they got the clicking and they could get their bass sound with the other 3. But it served as a drum effect there. It really did.
Because there was like some sort of a taboo that you couldn't use drums on records, on country records. Is that right? Is it as bad as it?
Yeah. The taboo was coming out of Nashville. The first time I played the Grand Ole Opry, I did Blue Suede Shoes without drums. That's how strict they were. They wouldn't allow them in the back door.
Why not? What was the thing against them?
Son, I don't know. That's just some dyed-in-the-wool, old Tennessee, hard-headed set ways that was hard to break. But the public demanded, and we finally broke the ice. It wasn't easy to get our records played in the beginning. Nobody knew what to do with it. The country DJs would say, "It's not country." The pops say, "Well, man, that's not pop music. That's more country. Them's old country guitars y'all flogging there." And the rhythm and blues boy said, "This ain't blues, so I can't touch it." But so what we really did, Elvis and myself, we worked together quite a bit back in 55, late 54, 55. And part of our job was when we left Sun Records was to put our records in the trunk of the car and visit the disc jockeys during the day. Whether we was playing in that town or not, we would stop, and it was the country stations that we would go to. Sam Phillips told us, he said, "Now you all are country boys, and you go in there and talk to that disc jockey, and he'll see your country." Said he'll pick it up, and he might play your record, and that's how we did it. It was the country stations that started playing the records first, but then it was the kids who started to dance into this music, and they started requesting it on all radio stations, and it wasn't very long till we didn't have a problem of getting it played not too long, because Presley took off so fast, and the demand for this type of music was just bigger than the hard-headed boys in Nashville. They had to give way, and that's the way it happened. Thanks to the kids, they're the ones that own it. And They made us all.
Okay, well, everybody knows Blue Suede Shoes. We played it here. It's a Radio 1 playlist record next week on the original version of it. So let's play something else of yours. I think, was the next record Boppin' the Blues?
Yeah, the next record after, pardon me, after Blue Suede Shoes was Boppin' the Blues. See, I had a very serious car wreck on the way to the Perry Como show when Blue Suede Shoes was #1 in the nation at that time. My record of it was, and I didn't get to do the Como show till about 5 months later. And when I was on Perry's show, there was a couple by the name of Ozzie and Harriet Nelson on the show, and during the break of the rehearsals, Harriet Nelson said, "Carl, I really am proud to meet you because I'm meeting Little Ricky's idol." Said, "He just sings your songs all the time." Said, "I'm afraid he's going to be a singer." I said, "Really?" Because I really, I'd watched him grow up on television over there. Their show was very big for many years. She said, "He just loves you. He sings your songs all the time, and he wanted me to get your autograph." So I autographed the thing for him and wrote a little note. And the first record that Ricky Nelson had was This Boppin' the Blues.
Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
I've been asked to rectify my... It's the new version on Jet Records of Blue Suede Shoes, which is on the Radio 1 playlist, and not the original. And the new one's good too. People talk here, I expect you know very well how celebrated the whole Sun sound is here in Britain.
Yeah, it's great too.
How much was a Sun sound? How much sense does it make to speak of that? In other words, it wasn't just a collection of people that happened to be on the same company. There was something about everybody that was similar in a way.
Yeah, Charlie, really, all the equipment he had in the beginning of Sun Records was just a little 2-track tape recorder. It was very small equipment. I think he might have gotten up to 3 microphones in the studio. I know when I was there was only 2. And everybody sounded a lot alike, and by that I mean the tone of their voices were a little shrill. They were a little high pitched, and it was due to the equipment he had. Of course, we didn't say our words alike, but if you'll notice, the early records, the early Sun records of Elvis, Jerry Lee, myself, just practically all of us had that same tone on the high notes of our voices, and that was that little 2-track machine that he struck gold with, and he didn't let nobody turn the knobs but him, and he turned it over on treble, and he cut everybody that way, except now Cash, he put a lot of bass on John's voice, but
so you just turned the treble up. And were you sing with headphones, or was it just...
No, I always wanted to put a pair of them on. I loved them things till I was 40 years old.
I'd have given you a pair now, but no.
I used to see an old fellow by the name of Arthur Godfrey on television. He'd wear those things. I used to wear earmuffs and hook a wire to them and nail it against the wall and make it like I had them on. I've been fascinated with those things all my life.
But all those Sun records were just done. You heard what the other guys were doing live in the studio, and that was it.
That's it. Yeah.
So the echo was put on afterwards. Like when you finished the record, you put the echo on, or what?
Well, he would. His first echoes was he cut it on 2 tape machines, and one of them was delayed just a hair, enough to make it tut, 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 tut. When he'd get it out of sync, and it'd tut, 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 it'd be too much. And on a lot of them, he got echo happy. If you listen to some of the old Sun things, he'd have a little snort, and he'd let his echo get away from it. But he was doing it with two machines, just delayed. One of them just a fraction of a second behind the other one's the way he would do it. But then he'd come up with little things like he'd come out of the. I keep saying I ought to clarify the fact it was Sam Phillips, the man that was doing this. He'd come out of the control room and he'd take the amp and he'd put it right in the corner, facing the corner, and he'd get different sounds. He'd say, "Now listen to it this way, Carl. Don't you like the way that sounds better?" I say, "Yes, sir, I believe I do." And he'd say, "Well, let's put you over here in this other corner." And a lot of times I would sing facing the corner, And then he'd come up with a big piece of pasteboard and put it behind you. You really never knew what he was going to do. It was, of course, it was always all right with us. We were happy to be making records, and it wouldn't have bothered me if he'd have nailed me to the wall. I felt fortunate to be there. I really did.
I guess after Elvis left Sun to go with RCA, you didn't work with him on the road anymore after that, or is that wrong?
No, you're right. Elvis Colonel Tom immediately, took him to Hollywood, and it was really big time for Elvis after then. He'd come back. When he'd come back to Memphis, he'd always come right to Sun Studios. He came in one time during the session that this was before Jerry Lee recorded as a singer. Jerry Lee was just a piano player down there, and I had hired Jerry to play piano. He got $15 for all day on Matchbox and Your True Love. And Elvis came in just after we'd finished doing both of those songs. And, of course, Johnny Cash was sitting in there, and Elvis and John and Jerry Lee and myself, my session just stopped there because we were all glad to see Elvis. And he was telling us about Las Vegas and how pretty the lights were, and how exciting it was. Of course, the first time he went out there, he went for 3 weeks, and he played 1 week, and they paid him for 3 and sent him home. He played the Frontier Club, and I actually felt then, and I still do, that because of that, they really put a lot of determination in Elvis. That hurt him very bad. I know he told us that day, he said, they'll get me back, and they'll pay more for me than they ever have anybody. And bless his heart, he made them do it.
A lot of people are always asking, is there any truth in the rumor? In fact, we got a question right here coming from a listener, that the $1 Million Quartet tapes are to be released, because that's the name those songs are now known under.
Yeah. They, I knew the next day Sam Phillips played me a little bit of it, but I didn't have any idea that he had as much, of John, Elvis, Jerry Lee, and myself. I didn't realize he had as much as he did. There was at least an hour and a half of that tape. I have heard it. I heard it 3 or 4 months ago, and of course the tape right now is tied up in court in Nashville. My number one reason for trying to stop the release on it was, Charlie, I didn't know. I had heard through the grapevine that they were going to take it and put Nashville pickers on it. There's a lot where Jerry Lee's just playing piano. There's several on there where Elvis is just playing piano, and we're just all singing. And like I say, I hadn't heard it, but then after Elvis died and this tape surfaced, why, I had heard through the grapevine that they were going to put, Nashville pickers on it and really make it a good sounding tape, and it bothered me because I wanted to be like it was. It belongs to the fans, and there is a lot of history there, and it sounds a lot better than I really ever dreamed that it could. It's not bad at all. It's kind of an odd thing that you'd have 4 guys in a studio for an hour and a half or 2, and them not know that it was being recorded, and there's not a dirty word said, not a dirty joke told. It's really authentic. We had no idea that it was being recorded.
We have a few questions here that are coming from listeners, so I just better ask you some of them, or they'll be wondering what's happening to the system. Did Carl use different guitars on Blue Suede Shoes, Matchbox, and Glad All Over?
Yeah, I sure did. Blue Suede Shoes, I used a little Les Paul. Matchbox, I had what they call a Gibson Switchmaster, which was a big hollow-bodied blonde guitar. I believe, Charlie, I used that same big blonde Switchmaster Gibson on the Glad All Over. I may have been playing a Fender by that time.
I'm amazed what you can remember. How can you remember it all?
Well, that's all I've ever done. That stays on my mind, biggest part of the time.
Okay. Have both versions of Sure to Fall been released?
Have both versions of Sure to Fall been
I
released?
hope you know what that means, because I hadn't.
Well, I didn't know there was but one. I know the Beatles have cut that song. It was one of the first things they recorded. I've got a tape of that at home, and maybe that's what they're talking about.
Okay, well.
I don't know.
All
I know
right.
their version of it never was released, I don't think.
Okay, that same person wanted to know where we can get tickets for Carl's forthcoming concerts. I better mention where the ones in the London area are. There's Wednesday the 19th of April at the Central Hall in Chatham, and we believe there's 2 shows then. On Thursday the 20th April at the Royalty Theatre in Southgate, and on Friday the 21st at the Odeon Lewisham. And where Carl, the last information he had was Johnny and the Hurricanes were going to be on the show. Well, he's flown to Nashville and back. Meanwhile, Matchbox have replaced him, so we better set that straight. Colin Watson wants to know which musicians played with Carl Perkins on the Muscle Shoals session in '76, and who produced that session. Who was that for, by the way?
It was produced by a fellow by the name of Johnny Marsh, the boy who produces Norval Phelps, John Wesley Riles. And I wish I could give the names of the musicians, but they're local Muscle Shoals, Alabama boys. There's some fine pickers down there. They really are. And
did that come out?
Well, I had 1 or 2 single releases. I cut about 24 tracks down there, but I understand they've been stopped from releasing it since I've signed with my new company.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Somebody might sneak them out one of these days. There's some good things cut there.
Okay, well, a listener called Gordon wanted to know if Call Elijah was scheduled as a single, but I guess with the Blue Suede Shoes out at the moment, you'll wait and see.
Well, I hope it does. I kind of think in the States that it might. I've been told by some big disc jockeys, Ralph Emery, for instance, and WSM in Nashville, heard the tapes right after I cut this album, and he's pretty shrewd in knowing what will go over there. He said, "You better watch Kalijah. That could be a single hit record for you," and I hope he's right.
Okay, Carl, I got one last question before freeing you from this. Well, it's been a wonderful experience for us, I'll tell you.
Oh, I've enjoyed it, man. It's been fun.
A listener called in to say, did you ever come up against any campaigns in the South saying that white people shouldn't be singing black music?
Oh, yeah, we certainly did. Back in the era when this music was being born, so to speak, there was, in that particular part of the country, there was racial problems, and we did have some problem there. A lot of disc jockeys said, "Man, I'd like to play it, but I don't know what my listeners are gonna say." I said, "Well, just play it and blame it on me, just help us, And they, of course, they did, and it smoothed itself out. But yeah, they noticed that we barred some of the black man's rhythm there, and there was some hard feelings, but not. We didn't really have a lot of it. They would maybe at a show they'd be 1 or 2 hecklers would holler, and we'd just turn it up a little bit and drown him out and rock on the other.
Did you ever play to black audiences at the time in that time?
Well, no. I did after Blue Suede Shoes came out. I never will forget the first time I met Chuck Berry. I did a tour with Chuck over there in '56. And he came in my dressing room and he said, "And you Carl Perkins?" I said, "And you got to be Chuck Berry." He said, "That's right." He said, "Are you as surprised as I am?" I said, "Well, I don't know, Chuck." He said, "I thought you was one of us, man."
All right. Well, I must say thank you. The listeners will certainly appreciate it, because we've been looking forward to you coming on the show, and to come after 17 hours on the plane and be as lively as you are. I don't know how you manage it.
Well, I've enjoyed it, Charlie. Thank you so very much. And you just spoke about the listeners, man. They are the ones. I love you out there. Thank you so much for all you've done for me. I appreciate it.
Okay, well, they'll be coming to see you one of these London gigs. And we'll
Great.
go out with one more track from the Jet LP. Old Blue Suede's is back, and he certainly is. With we were speaking about Chuck Berry. We'll do Maybelline.
Great.